Congratulations, failure. We're finished. He mocked me with his rich friends on my birthday, while I slid my little gift across the table. Calmly, I said, explain to your sisters why tuition disappears, to your parents why their house and cars vanish in minutes, and to your partners why the company dies before dessert. I stood, and the panic began. What kind of person serves divorce papers at his wife's birthday party? My mother had asked when I called her 2 weeks before, crying about the humiliation I knew was coming. But that was the wrong question. The real question was, what kind of person spends 6 months secretly preparing to destroy everything her husband values while pretending to be the devoted wife he expects? The answer was me, sitting at the far end of Marcello's, watching Jake perform for his audience of sycophants, my hand resting on the envelope that would answer both questions exactly the way he deserved. But I'm getting ahead of myself. To understand how I reached that moment, you need to understand the perfect illusion I had been maintaining for years. That morning, 2 weeks after my mother's call, I woke at 5:30 a.m. just as I had every day for 8 years. Jake lay on his side of the California king bed, turned away from me even in sleep. The space between us might as well have been an ocean. I studied his back, remembering when he used to pull me close in those drowsy minutes before the day began. Now he hugged the mattress edge like he might catch something if he touched me. Our Westchester house was silent as I made my way to the kitchen. 5 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, a 3-car garage, all filled with the symbols of success Jake needed the world to see. I prepared his coffee with scientific precision. Ethiopian blend, 15 seconds in the grinder, water at exactly 195 degrees. Anything less earned me that familiar frown, the one that said ID. Sap pointed him again. While the coffee brewed, I set his breakfast. Egg white omelet with organic spinach, 1 slice of whole grain toast with exactly 1 teaspoon of almond butter, and fresh orange juice in crystal. Everything arranged to perfection. Details that looked like love, but were really terms of an unspoken contract where my worth was measured in flawless performance. At 6:45, Jake appeared in his Tom Ford suit, Harvard ring catching the morning light. He sat without acknowledging me, already absorbed in his phone. The investor meeting is at 10 o'clock, he said. Be there by 9:45 to set up. I replied neutrally, of course. The materials are ready. What I didn't say was that I'd also spent 3 hours debugging the algorithm that made those returns possible. The Pythia algorithm was my creation, born from my MIT doctorate, raised through sleepless nights of coding. But in Jake's world, I was just the woman who arranged papers and poured coffee, while he explained my work to men who pretended to understand. 3 hours later, I stood in Meridian Capital's conference room arranging portfolios while Jake tested the clicker. 20 investors arrived, shaking his hand with reverence. He presented the models I had designed, reciting my words like lines in a play. When an investor asked a technical question, I watched Jake hesitate before deflecting. I could have answered in 30 seconds, but instead I poured coffee, silent and invisible. That evening we drove to his parents' estate in Greenwich. Margaret greeted Jake with their kisses, barely acknowledging me. Lexi, dear, you can put the wine in the kitchen. At dinner, she announced Emma's engagement at the country club, calling it fitting for Senator Whitman's son. When I offered to help, Harrison Sr. laughed. Sweetheart, just keep my son happy. Leave the planning to the women who understand these things. Kate. EY didn't know I had been secretly managing their investments for years, guiding the returns that funded their lifestyle. After dinner, I lay awake replaying the laughter. At 3:47 a.m., I gave up on sleep, went downstairs, and sat with my laptop. I meant to review code, but instead looked at photos of my mother on Facebook, her book club, a modest living room, genuine smiles. Happiness I couldn't remember feeling. The next morning, I served Jake his breakfast as always, but something had shifted. I need to visit Mom next week, I said. Her hip replacement is Thursday. Without looking up, Jake replied, that woman still lives in a rental, doesn't she? At her age, it's embarrassing. That woman. Not my mother. Not the woman who'd raised me alone after Dad died. I clenched my jaw. She needs someone there, I said. Jake waved me off. Send money for nurse. We can't have you disappearing before the Goldman presentation. Then, smiling at his phone, really smiling, not the practiced client smile, he typed quickly before noticing me watching. He deleted the message, set the phone face down, and stood. Actually, I should head in early. David Lawson is coming by to discuss some technical restructuring. David Lawson. The name sent a small warning signal through my mind, but Jake was already heading upstairs for his briefcase. I heard the garage door close, leaving me alone with his cold eggs and a growing unease about that deleted message and sudden smile. 3 days later, I was in our home office performing Meridian Capital's quarterly backup. Jake insisted on personal copies of everything, paranoid about server crashes and cyberattacks. The external drives hummed as terabytes transferred. I usually use this time to review code, but a folder caught my eye, restructuring_confidential_Q3. My finger hovered before I clicked. Inside were documents dated 3 weeks earlier that made my blood run cold. A draft press release announced David Lawson as Meridian Capital's new Chief Technology Office. Not consultant, not advisor, but CTO, my role erased. The org chart put Jake at the top, David beneath him, 3 new partners from his Princeton eating club filling the executive team. My name appeared nowhere. The final document was worse. A memo titled Operational Efficiency Initiative outlining plans to eliminate redundant positions. Redundant. 8 years of building every technical system that made Meridian function, and I was redundant. In Jake's handwriting at the bottom, implementation after Q2 personal matter resolved. Personal matter. Is that what I'd become? My hands shook as I copied everything to a hidden partition on my laptop. The backup crawled on while I absorbed that my elimination had been planned, documented, and scheduled like any business transaction. 2 days later, I needed air and went to a cafe near Meridian's office. I rarely ate out alone, but the house felt like it was closing in. I just ordered when Julia Brennan, Jake's secretary, walked in with another woman. They sat behind me. I could smell Julia's aggressive perfume. Pretending to read, I hit record. So the birthday surprise at Marcello's is set, Julia said, giddy. 40 guests, private room, the works. Whose birthday? Her friend asked. The wife's, Julia replied. But that's not it. Jake's finally ready to make the change he's been planning. The poor thing still brings him lunch every Tuesday like some devoted housewife. She has no idea. Alexandra. The name hit me like ice water. I kept breathing, eyes on my phone while recording. He's been moving assets for months. By the time she figures it out, there won't be anything left to fight over. Princeton boys always protect their money. I paid for my untouched sandwich and left, my phone burning with evidence of my scheduled destruction. I walked for an hour, letting the September air clear my head while puzzle pieces clicked into place, the deleted texts, the early meetings with Lawson, the restructuring docs, and now Alexandra. That night, I texted Rachel Murphy, an MIT friend in financial forensics. Rachel looked the same, red hair in a messy bun. She hugged me, studied my face, and said, "You look like someone who discovered their house is built on quicksand, ordering us whiskey." I told her everything. The documents, the cafe recording, Jake's changes, the erasure of my contributions. She listened, occasional nods as she recognized patterns. "Lexi, this isn't just a divorce setup," she said, sliding her card across the scarred table. "This is asset stripping and strategic positioning. He's planning to leave you with nothing while making it look like you never contributed." She showed me similar cases on her tablet. Men like Jake don't just walk away. They scorch earth so their narrative survives. Her words echoed during my drive home. I pulled into the garage at 11 p.m. and found Jake passed out on the leather couch in his study, 3 empty scotch glasses on the side table, Princeton reunion papers scattered across his chest. Even unconscious, he wore entitlement. Mouth slightly open, one hand loosely holding his phone. The screen lit up with a notification from Alexandra, just her first name, no last name, intimate enough for one name. I left him and took my laptop to the guest bathroom, the only room I could lock without questions. I balanced the laptop on the closed toilet, sat on the tub's edge with a notepad, and began to build my defense, I would become invisible the way he'd made me invisible, but with purpose. I created Nemesis Holdings using the same offshore structures I'd set up for the Harrisons. Bermuda for the main holding company, Cayman subsidiaries for investment arms, and a Delaware LLC for U.S. operations. Each entity looked legitimate on paper, with registration numbers and documentation that would pass casual scrutiny. By 3 a.m., I had 7 interconnected companies existing only in legal documents and encrypted servers, controlled by Password. DS Jake would never think to look for. The opportunity to weaponize that structure came sooner than expected. That Sunday at the Harrison estate, Harrison Sr. complained about mortgage rates. Highway robbery, he grumbled. I looked up from my salmon with an idea crystallizing. Some MIT alumni started an investment fund. They do real estate-backed loans, stable, low risk. Better than bank rates, maybe 4.5% flexible schedules. They prefer people they can trust. I could make an introduction. Margaret's eyebrows rose, my first sign of interest in months. I kept my voice casual. Within a week, I'd orchestrated the deal of a lifetime. I invented investment partners with fabricated LinkedIn and HBS backgrounds, created emails and phone numbers forwarding to burner phones, and had a friend pose as a partner in a call with Harrison's lawyer. The documents were flawless, but buried in subsection 47C was an acceleration clause tied to material changes in family relationships of the primary borrower. Harrison's lawyer skimmed it on a rushed Friday afternoon and said, "Standard stuff." The $15 million refinancing went through the next week. The Harrisons celebrated. I smiled quietly, knowing they'd handed me a loaded weapon that could destroy them with 7 minutes' notice. Property was only the beginning. During maintenance windows, when trading systems were offline, I began fragmenting the Pythia algorithm, surgery on my own creation, separating components designed to work as a whole. Each change looked like routine updates Jake signed without reading. What he was signing were licensing agreements between Meridian and Nemesis subsidiaries, neural network components licensed from one entity, predictive modeling from another, data processing from a third. Individually, standard vendor agreements. Together, they meant Meridian no longer owned the technology that made it valuable. They were renting their own brain from me, and the rental agreements had specific terms about what happened if payments stopped or contracts were breached. The final piece involved Jake's sisters. Emma and Sophia treated me like help, but they accepted my assistance when it came to their trust funds. During a family dinner, they complained about tax implications. I offered to restructure their trusts for better yields and flexibility. They didn't notice that certain obligations require their father to sign as guarantor, obligations linked to his property loans through cross-default provisions. Their signatures completed the architecture that would topple everything when I pulled the trigger. One domino. They didn't see it. I did. 3 weeks after finishing the architecture, the weight of the secret was cracking my facade. My mother called. She'd booked a flight and was coming for the weekend without asking. Jake rolled his eyes when I told him. Mom arrived on a Friday while Jake was at the office. She hugged me longer than usual, thinner, but strong. She didn't comment on the house. She studied my face with the sharp eyes that always saw through me. "You've lost weight," she said. "How long has he been this cruel?" she asked over scrambled eggs the next morning. I broke down and told her everything. She listened, squeezed my hand, then said, "Your father had a first wife. She waited too long to leave. By the time she got out, she'd lost everything. Not just money, but herself." She stood and pulled me up. "Come on, we're packing a go bag." We filled a small suitcase with essentials, copies of important documents, and cash hidden behind old skis in the basement. Jake never went down there. "When you're ready to leave," she said, "you call me. Day or night, I'll be here." The Tuesday after Mom left, a delivery driver rang with an elaborate bouquet of peonies, my least favorite flower. The card read, "Can't wait for your freedom." My hands trembled as I carried the bouquet inside. I called the florist in a cheerful voice. "Oh yes, Mrs. Harrison," she chirped. "Mr. Har. Ison's weekly arrangement for Ms. Alexandra Thornton. Same time every Tuesday at 2 p.m. He's been so consistent for the past 6 months." 6 months. While I'd been trying to save our marriage, He'd been sending another woman flowers every week at the Ritz-Carlton where he claimed client meetings. I wrote it down with a steady hand. Screaming inside. 2 weeks later, he insisted I attend the Princeton alumni dinner. "We need to present a united front," he said, oblivious to the irony. He put me at the wife's table in the corner while he held court near the bar. I sat between a plastic surgeon's third wife and a hedge fund manager's girlfriend, listening to vacation house talk while I pushed salmon around my plate. Then I heard Jake across the room explaining Meridian's algorithm, down to the exact mathematical models I developed for my doctorate, using phrases from our morning discussions years ago. I forced a smile when someone asked if I was proud of my husband's success. Across the room, Thomas Morrison, my old MIT professor and dissertation advisor, stood near the bar. He caught my eye and raised his water glass slightly, a silent acknowledgement of the truth we both knew but couldn't speak in a room full of Jake's allies. The next day I drove to the storage unit I'd rented under one of Nemesis Holdings' names. Inside I'd built a command center. Bankers' boxes lined the walls, each labeled. Financial documents showing the removal of my name from patents and contracts. Printed emails between Jake and his lawyer about a clean exit strategy. The recorded cafe conversation where Julia laughed about my ignorance. I spent hours setting automated triggers to execute everything simultaneously once activated. Each envelope was prepared, sealed, and labeled. One for the SEC with evidence of Jake's misrepresentation to investors. One for Harrison Sr.'s mortgage company with ACI. Laration notices. One for Yale's financial aid office to freeze trust funds. And one special envelope for Jake with 7 lines that would reveal how his empire depended on systems he'd never bothered to understand. I locked the storage unit and drove home with the sealed envelope tucked in my laptop bag. Tonight was my 32nd birthday. Jake hadn't mentioned it once that morning. Instead, he'd reminded me twice about dinner at Marcello's, insisting I be ready by 7 sharp. The pretense of celebration while planning my public execution would have been laughable if it weren't so cruel. When I got home at 4:30, Jake was in the bedroom, 3 dresses laid out like props. He held up a red cocktail dress. "Wear something sophisticated. Not that black thing you always default to." I picked up the simple black sheath I'd bought before marriage, a piece from a tie-my dress for myself. "I'll wear this." His jaw tightened and used to push back. He turned away, shrugging into his Armani suit. My vanity, I watched him fasten new sapphire cufflinks. I recognized the Cartier box. Alexandra Thornton had posted about it weeks earlier. "Beautiful cufflinks," I said evenly. "A gift from a client." He lied too quickly. I slid the black envelope into my purse. By 8:47, the triggers inside would begin dismantling his world. Marcello's, the private dining room overflowed with his Princeton friends, business partners, and their polished wives. Not one of my friends was there. My seat card was at the far end, while Alexandra's was beside Jake, her white dress glowing like a bride's. Margaret kissed my cheek with a pitying smile. Dinner unfolded in predictable luxury. 7 courses, endless champagne, Jake holding court while Alexandra touched his arm. When dessert arrived, he stood glass raised. "Before we toast to Lex's birthday, I have an announcement. Congratulations, failure. We're finished." The room erupted in cruel laughter. Alexandra applauded. I'd composed, walked the length of the table, and slid the envelope toward him. "Before you celebrate, explain to your sisters why their tuition disappears, your parents why their home and cars vanish, and your partners why the company collapses before dessert." Silence. His smile faltered as he opened it. I left. By the time the elevator closed, phones buzzed like an alarm. Across the street in my Tesla, I watched dashboards light up. Loan accelerations, trust freezes, system lockouts. Through Marcello's windows, panic spread like wildfire. I drove to my Brooklyn brownstone, my secret sanctuary, bought through Nemesis Holdings for 3 days. I ignored their frantic calls, sipping tea while Meridian Capital unraveled. On the 4th morning, Jake appeared on my doorstep. His Armani suit was wrinkled, his ring gone, his eyes hollow. "Please," he whispered, unable to meet my gaze. "The company is gone. My parents are losing their house. Emma and Sophia can't graduate. The SEC is investigating. Just tell me how to fix this. You can't, I said. Live with the consequences. He shoved a legal packet into my hands, threats of extortion and theft. I smiled and sent it to Catherine Blackwood, my lawyer, who responded with proof. I own the code. I had recordings of Julia and emails of Jake plotting my removal. Every threat became evidence against him. 2 days later, Alexandra arrived. Gone was the polished white dress. She wore jeans and a sweater, clutching a flash drive. He used my position at Goldman for insider trading. Everything's here. Emails, trade records, recordings. Why give it to me? I asked. Because he ruined me like he tried to ruin you. The difference is you fought back. I handed her an SEC investigator's card. He'll want this. She nodded and left. I returned to my laptop as new alerts confirmed Jake's collapse. Catherine's email arrived, Meridian's B. Ord had called an emergency meeting. All roads led back to Nemesis Holdings. The unraveling was complete. Catherine had already told them I would attend, not as Jake's estranged wife, but as the controlling owner of their entire technical infrastructure. The next morning, I dressed in a simple navy suit, professional, not flashy. Meridian Capital's offices sat on the 32nd floor of a Manhattan tower, the same building where I had once served coffee to investors who ignored me. This time, receptionists stared in shock as I walked in. The boardroom went silent. 7 members sat around the polished table, including Jake, who looked 5 years older in 1 week. David Lawson was there, useless without my work. Harrison Sr. had his usual seat, though he couldn't afford the parking garage anymore. I ignored the far chair they had set for me, and instead connected my laptop. The first slide showed the ownership structure of the Pythia algorithm. Gentlemen, I began, watching them flinch. Every line of code Meridian relies on belongs to Nemesis Holdings, owned by me. Your licensing agreements expired the moment Jake announced our divorce at Marcello's, triggering the morality clause. Next slide, patents filed under my maiden name, Lexington Brooks. Their due diligence had missed them completely. Marcus Webb, the pragmatic venture capitalist, finally asked, "What do you want?" Option 1, I said. Recognize me as founder and majority owner with 70% equity. Jake keeps 5%. The board splits the rest. Option 2, I sell to Quantum Partners for pennies, and you explain to your investors why they lost everything. This is extortion. Jake spat. No, I replied. This is capitalism. I own what you need. I'm offering it at a fair price. They exchanged trapped glances. Without Pythia, Meridian was nothing. We need time to discuss, Webb said. You have 1 hour. I left, my attorney waiting with contracts. At a coffee shop across the street, I watched messengers rush in and out. When I returned, the contracts were signed. I was majority owner. 3 days later, the Wall Street Journal headline read, "The ghost genius who built and rebuilt Meridian Capital." Reporter Susan Chin exposed everything. My MIT work, my coding marathons, Jake's theft. Photos showed me at graduation beside my professor, contrasted with Jake presenting my work as his own. The truth was undeniable. CNBC, Bloomberg, and Forbes called. I declined. I had bigger plans. At Quantum Partners conference room overlooking Central Park, I named my price. $40 million for the Pythia algorithm, with a 5-year non-compete. They agreed in 10 minutes. By lunch, the wire was confirmed. That afternoon, I signed the lease for Athena Financial's offices, 6 floors below where Meridian was dying. My team was already assembled. Dr. Sarah Okoro passed over at the Fed despite her brilliance. Jessica Martinez, whose risk models were stolen by male colleagues at Goldman. Amy Patterson, a coder exploited for millions but stuck as junior developer. In our new space, Sarah toasted, to the overlooked and underestimated. We cheered while Jake faced his downfall. The SEC, armed with Alexandra's evidence, uncovered insider trading. His partners abandoned him. Investors fled. Within weeks, Meridian existed only on paper. Harrison Sr. declared bankruptcy. The estate was auctioned. Margaret moved in with her sister. Emma and Sophia transferred to state schools, working retail to survive. The dynasty crumbled when my mother arrived by train. She touched my office door's gold lettering, Athena Financial, founder CEO. Tears streamed down her face. You didn't just survive, baby. You soared. We cried together, not from anger, but pride. Athena thrived. Our first client, Hartman Industries, signed a $2 million annual contract, citing their confidence in the algorithm's true creator. By month's end, R2. R&S beat Meridian's best quarter by 30%. Brilliant women kept joining us. Lisa Choung, Rebecca Torres, Maria Petrov, all with stories like mine. We hired them all. Collaboration replaced hierarchy. Success was shared. 6 months later, I delivered the keynote at Chicago's Financial Innovation Conference. As I adjusted the mic backstage, I saw him across the floor. Jake was manning a booth for Brennan Associates, a third-tier firm. His Tom Ford was gone, replaced by ill-fitting polyester. His hair had thinned. His ring never returned. The man who once mocked me now stood forgotten. And I, no longer invisible, stood on stage as the woman who had built it all. He was explaining something to a potential client who looked unimpressed, trying to project the authority he once wore so easily. Our eyes met across the convention floor. For a moment, time froze. Recognition flickered across his face, followed by something I never expected from Jake Harrison: shame. He looked away first. The man who once called me a failure in front of 40 people couldn't face the woman who had rebuilt herself from his betrayal. I delivered my keynote to a standing ovation. 500 industry professionals listened as I outlined innovations beyond Pythia. During QA, someone asked about my journey. I told the truth, how being erased from my own creation taught me to protect my work and never let anyone diminish it. After the conference, I invested $10 million from the quantum sale into the Nemesis Foundation, a lifeline for women whose work had been stolen. Professor Morrison joined the board, helping us identify overlooked talent. Our first grants went to a Seattle programmer whose patents had been stolen by her supervisor, and to 3 women stripped of their startup in a hostile takeover. Within 6 months, we were supporting 27 women across the country, each rising from the ruins of theft. One evening, overlooking the Hudson, my phone buzzed. An unknown number, Jake. His message was short. You destroyed everything. I snapped a photo of our Forbes feature. Athena named one of the top 10 most innovative firms and sent it back. Then I blocked his number, cutting the last thread. He was right in a way. I had destroyed everything. Everything built on lies and erasure. But from that destruction, I built something better. That night, I called my mother. Mom, there's a 2-bedroom in my building. Perfect for your book club. Move here. She started to protest. I stopped her. You supported me through everything. Let me give back. Her happy tears said it all. I looked at my reflection in the darkened window. No longer the invisible wife who poured coffee while others claimed her work. No longer the woman humiliated at her own birthday dinner. I was someone who turned betrayal into the foundation for greatness. The best revenge wasn't reclaiming what was stolen or watching others fall. It was building something so magnificent their betrayal became only a footnote. Jake thought he ended my story at Marcello's. Instead, he freed me to write a better one, surrounded by brilliant women who refused to remain invisible. Emails from new clients and partnerships filled my inbox. I stood in my office watching the city lights below, finally at peace with the journey that brought me here. This story of calculated revenge kept you hooked to the end. My favorite part? When Lexi slid that black envelope across the marble table at Marcello's, igniting 7 minutes of financial destruction. What was yours? Drop it in the comments, hit like, and don't miss the next gripping story.